Okay, that was Afrobeat Orchestra, and this is Global Currents on the Spark FM. I'm Sita Balani, and today we're going to be talking about the G8. Our theme for the show is exporting debt, and our guests for the day are Miriam and Hamza. So, as you'll probably know, this week is the G8, in which powerful economies from around 8 powerful economies are going to meet to make decisions that are going to affect all of us. Their big themes are going to be tax evasion and hunger in Africa. So these are the issues, but there are lots of issues they aren't going to be talking about, including debt. And so we've got Mariam in the studio who's going to talk to us a bit about debt.
Thanks very much. So I wanted to talk about the big thing that I see that it won't be tackled, which is, for me, the issue of concentration of power in the hands of multinationals and financial institutions, and really more globally the financialization of the global economy. So as we know, over the past few decades, huge debt has been created in the global south by financial institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank, who have historically used debt really as an instrument of domination to mold entire economies to the benefits of these G8 economies and financial institutions tied to them. But also, I think these are very interesting times, because what's happening in parallel is things like austerity biting Europe as a result of huge private debts, which are themselves the results of failures in the banking sector, being transferred, so exported from private debts into public debts. So these are things that we are having to pay for as a society, and these are things that are actually going to be hurting the most vulnerable and the poorest in society. So what's interesting about this time is that really there is now almost a convergence, and really what is that the crux of these issues, both inequality and poverty globally, but also now that we're seeing mounting in Europe, is at the heart of all of this is the domination system of the multinationals and the financial institutions, which the G8 is not going to tackle because it's very much part of that system.
That's great. Thank you so much for that overview. I'm just going to pass over to Hamza now, who might talk to us a little bit about how we can resist this process.
Yeah, before we go to the solution, I want to say something about the G8, because these meetings have been taking place for a long time, and those countries, the G8 countries, have been promising to eradicate hunger and poverty for a long time, and it didn't happen. I think the problem is a structural fundamental one, in which the economic and political policies of the G8 are just maintaining the status quo, perpetuating the poverty and extending the domination and the wealth gap between the global north and the global south. For example, the institutions run by the dominant countries like the IMF and the World Bank are just pushing for drastic conditions on the global south countries, which create unemployment and huge poverty. And of course, the G8 countries are supporting the financialization and the militarization of the world. So for me, the solution really is to move away from such oppressive and tyrannical and democratic institution and try to involve all the world in the decision making and to try to empower the communities at the grassroots levels. So for me, this won't happen without challenging the current neoliberal global order and try to create South-South alliances that will involve people and try to put the value of social justice at the heart of all the decisions.
That's great. Thank you so much to both of our guests and to the technical team. We're finishing up for the day, so here's a little bit more from Afrobeat Orchestra. Okay, we are back in the studio and we've got a little bit more time, so we just thought it'd be great if we could get back to talking about debt and the G8. And we left you off with a question about South-South alliances, so I wondered if Miriam, you had any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would completely agree with Hamza in terms of the need for more alliances between countries in the global south that have been suffering for decades of this kind of system of domination. However, I think just going back to what I was saying earlier, I think it's an interesting time actually in terms of the learnings that we could get in the north, us who are starting to suffer from austerity in Europe, for example, the learnings that we can get from these countries in the south that have had experience over the last few decades. Just to give you a little example of that. That being the major issue that we're discussing today, Brazil was one of the first countries in 2001 in which a debt audit was called by the population, and the debt audit is basically a way of saying, a way of the public to say, look, if this debt is now ours, well, let us analyze it and decide which debt is actually legitimate and which one is not and is illegal and is actually extortionate. And several countries followed from there. So Ecuador is another example where actually the president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, decided that the only debt he owed to his people, the only debt that he owed was to his people, and he conducted this debt audit that took 2 years to achieve. However, at the end of that process, a lot of Ecuador's debt was actually, came to be seen as illegal, illegitimate, and got rejected. And now this is something that's happening here. Countries like Spain, countries like Portugal, countries like Greece that are suffering from austerity today can learn from these global audits, can learn from these audits that have happened in the South. So this is really the time for us to get together at a global community of grassroots movements to address those issues.
That's great. Thank you so much for those really interesting examples from Latin America. We've just got a few seconds left, so I just wondered if Hamza, if you had any conclusions you could draw from that, maybe keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short and focus mainly on the debts. I think for the countries of the South to take a step towards a genuine development, these debts need to be cancelled because they are crippling them. They're not the money that should go into an economic development is going to repaying the debts, and some of them, as Miriam said, are illegitimate and illegal.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Today we've covered the issue of debt, which is an issue that they were not going to be covering at the G8. And so it's been great to have some guests in the studio to talk about that. And now we will leave you with some more music.